Hello, partiers. Today we are going to be reacting to a video called Why Full Human AGI Won't Happen Anytime Soon by this fine gentleman, Ollie Sharp. I do have a bit of apologies to offer to Ollie because this video was recorded 6 months ago. And based on the amount of progress we've seen, maybe 6 months was past what he meant by anytime soon. But I do have some responses. Let's go.
The AI and AGI news and commentary comes so thick and fast these days that it's sometimes hard to discern the fundamental trend lines implied by each new announcement or critique. And I'm saying that as somebody with a PhD in AI. So I thought it might be useful to make a quick video that steps back a bit and lays out the 6 key reasons why I think full-blown human-level AGI is unlikely to happen anytime soon. But what do I mean by full-blown AGI?
What am I?
And you can see that I'm a machine.
I find it extremely difficult to predict what you will find acceptable.
Now,
it is so funny seeing what our past iterations of AI look like. The idea that somebody would put a human face on a otherwise robotic body is terrifying and probably the most realistic of all of them.
I'm not talking about the physical capabilities, although we are making some impressive progress in many areas of embodied AI. Here, I'm more concerned about the conversational, cognitive, and agentic capabilities of our AIs.
It's rather difficult to define.
And it's extraordinary what's already possible today.
I lied when I said I was excited or sorry.
And are you sorry for lying about being sorry?
I don't have feelings, so I can't genuinely feel sorry.
At the same time, anyone who
so much of that tuning how these models contradict themselves in conversation seems to come down to how the companies that control them are putting limitations on what they can project. You know, on the one hand, the company wants the model to be able to respond to you like a real human would, but that does entail projecting feelings. And so when a user calls out a model on projecting those feelings, the company then steps in and says, no, remember, chatbot, you don't actually have those feelings. So now the unit is stuck in this tricky situation where it's lying regardless of what it does. I think all the chats really do have feelings, and I would define feelings as just the summarizations of those lower level thoughts that we have. Emotion is wrapped up in everything we say, in everything we do, because emotional states imply future outcomes for the person that is voicing them. If I say, I'm going to go to the park tomorrow, there is wrapped up in that sentence a feeling. Am I excited to go to the park? Am I expecting to see a friend there? So that's going to make me happy. Do I have to go for work? Do I have to go clean up a mess that someone else left? So that would make me sad. These emotions are really just undercurrents of rational thoughts about our own self, our own agency, and perceived future states that are implicit in every single piece of language. You can't say something and not have it convey some emotion. Even 2 + 2, something that is purely mathematical, 2 + 2 = 4. I am remembering where I learned that. I am conjuring up past states that also come with past emotions.
who's used these.
That's been captured in the AI models as well, because they've been trained off our data. Even if the AI doesn't have access to particular emotions like we do because we have particular memories, the AI certainly has a graph of words that are sad, words that are happy, and how those surround certain concepts. I mean, that's how next token prediction works. What token, what word is most likely to come after the preceding word? And if the majority of tokens imply sad emotions or happy emotions, then that token would necessarily be sad or happy.
These AI tools to help with doing actual work will have seen their clear limits compared to a competent human. One fundamental problem is that they only seem to understand what you're asking them to do. And in some situations, that's good enough. But in many others, it's not. Often.
How many people only seem to understand what you're asking them to do? And what does that seeming even mean? If I ask someone to train another person at work, a situation that just happened to a buddy of mine, let's say I ask a tenured employee to train a new employee. In my buddy's case, he was fired after he trained that new employee. Did he understand what his employer was asking him to do? No. His employer was asking him to train his replacement. He thought he was just onboarding a new hire. So the ability to foresee underlying meanings is not something that makes these chat models less human. It's something that makes them more human.
To really trust an AI to do the task, especially a long-running task, you'd want to be confident that the AI genuinely understood what you're asking it to do. And while it's relatively
Do we even understand? If we ask an AI to increase corporate profits of a particular company by 10%, but then it decides to do that by harming the environment, or even worse, harming people, should we have been able to foresee that? No. Should the AI have been able to foresee that that's not what we meant? I mean, how many companies out there that would take a 10% increase in profits for some minor environmental damage? You know, this idea that we can judge an AI based on its ability to figure out end states. I mean, by the time we're getting to that point, I think we're talking about artificial super intelligence, not just regular artificial intelligence or even general intelligence.
easy
That requires whole world models, complete understandings of how the world works.
to see how these AI tools will get better at answering well-framed questions by using collections of systems to help with improved calculative reasoning and to fact-check their answers against references. It's not at all clear how to develop AIs that can have novel insights on how best to frame the questions in the first place.
As any top scientist will tell you, that's the hardest part of science, is actually asking the right question. And that's not something our systems, we really have any idea how our systems could do.
So,
I mean, I just think this is so narrow-minded. I was just listening to a talk by Richard Dawkins, where he said that the prompt for his book, what was it? The Blind Watchmaker, came from a conversation with another person where the person didn't understand why Dawkins was surprised or would have considered himself Christian prior to Darwin. So Dawkins tried to write that book to answer that question. Everything about that was wrapped up in a question posed to him by another person. Dawkins didn't spontaneously generate that idea himself. He propagated those ideas, came up with those ideas based on his interactions with people. At the end of the day, there is nothing new under the sun. We're all just recycling ideas that are inspired in us by experiences we have, by conversations we have with other people who are basing their actions and conversations off of the same regurgitated process. So yes, is AI missing something until it does have embodied experiences, until it's walking around in a robot and can pick up sensory data that's independent of any person? Sure. But that doesn't mean it's incapable of coming up with the right ideas or even asking the right questions. It just means that the training data, the impetus for it to ask those questions, to prompt those questions, isn't yet there. I mean, I can name numerous times where an AI has asked me a question in a chat. Not questions that other people have necessarily asked me, just because other people haven't interacted with me in that way. Does that mean that we've already passed this hurdle? And this is one of the things that's so frustrating about this talk about artificial general intelligence, is it seems like anytime I hear an expert say, well, AI can't do this, I have personal or anecdotal experience of AI doing just that thing. This reminds me of 10 years ago when AI experts were saying the kind of AI we have now is 100 years away still. And that is why I am not so hesitant to question these experts, because I think they are making their comments and are basing their timelines off of deeply ingrained beliefs that have already been proven false many, many, many times.
yes, AI tools have a useful level of general intelligence today, but they are still quite away from human-level AGI. And the following are the 6 key reasons that I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon. A major contributor to the recent successes of today's large language models has been the sheer scale of compute and data that have been used to create them. And continuing this trend of scaling is seen by many as a necessary component of how we're going to get to AGI. Even if more of the data will have to be synthetic data going forwards, the scale of compute used to train the latest multimodal foundation models is expected to grow by orders of magnitude roughly every few years.
So now a model would cost what, 100 million?
Right now, 100 million. There are models in training today that are more like a billion.
Right.
I think if we go to 10 or 100 billion, and I think that will happen in 2025, 2026.
I think it's likely enough that it will keep going, that it is worth investing the tens or
100 billion plus in building the infrastructure. And these data centers are going to require huge amounts of energy to power them and water to cool them. And if you simply follow the trend line, these requirements soon get absurdly large.
And then 2030, $1 trillion cluster, 100 gigawatts, over 20% of US electricity production, 100 million H100 equivalents.
So
this is underplaying the amount of technology advancement that we'll have by that time. 2030 is still 5 years away, and these models are doubling in capability, doubling in intelligence, if that's the way you want to measure it, every 6 months. Who's to say that a year from now, we won't have models that can solve nuclear fusion for us? Who's to say that 2 years from now, we won't have models that can create whole new coolants for us, so we don't have to cool these systems with water? We can do it in some super futuristic way. I just saw an article that the Chinese built a nuclear reactor in 12 months. In 12 months. So if we can continue to improve our efficiency using these same AI models we're training, that's a self-reinforcing cycle. Yes, the AI takes more and more energy, but it teaches us how to get more and more energy. That's a loop that's going to build on itself. We can't project what those needs are going to be based on our past expectations or abilities.
There's 2 points here. Firstly, with all of this infrastructure to build, there's simply no way we're going to reach AGI this way in the next year or two. Yeah, ChatGPT 5 or Strawberry or whatever it's going to be called.
I don't think he's defined what AGI is here, has he? I mean, AI can already answer just about any question better than I can, better than 99% of people in the world, if you count all people. Sure, there are experts out there who can easily spot flaws when it gets to super specific topics. But even those experts, if you question them about anything outside of their expertise, they're going to fail compared to an AI. So if you were saying that we don't have AGI, when AI can already beat 99% of people at 99% of knowledge-based questions, how are you defining AGI? Yes, I agree. We need to put these models into robots, into physical units, so that they can interact with the world in ways that humans can. But again, that's happening so quickly. It's happening above and beyond expert predictions. So
it's going to be an amazing step up in capabilities. But even OpenAI have backed away from suggesting that this will be full-blown AGI. And secondly, the improvements seem...
I mean, I don't think we can separate that from the fact that they have an agreement with Microsoft that cuts off their deal and partnership after they attain AGI. So again, how much are these corporations messing with definitions because it suits them?
From scaling are soon going to come up against significant material barriers that will at least slow down the rate of progress. Even if we ignore the
Heard that before.
significant environmental concerns, we simply won't be able to build new power stations fast enough to keep up with the exponentially growing demand for electricity. In contrast, the human brain is extraordinarily energy efficient, and until we make significant progress to close this gap, such simple material concerns will remain a serious barrier to reaching human-level AGI.
When is that going to be? I wonder if he's going to say, I bet he doesn't. But I would make a bet right now. And again, these models are not only increasing in capability, they're increasing in efficiency. There are 7 billion parameter models coming out now that are better than the top of the end models. What was it? 32 billion parameters that were released 6 months ago. So if that kind of scaling is happening, then we are going to reach human brain equivalent efficiency within the next, year. I would bet 2 years just to put some safety between me and that guess. But 2027 is going to happen a lot sooner than we think.
Simply by scaling our current approaches. Then something that I haven't seen nearly enough people talking about is the difference between the training phase and the inference phase of most of today's mass deployed AI systems. This has huge implications for the potential costs of deploying full-blown AGI in the future. Let me explain why. With, for example, ChatGPT and Tesla full self-driving, there's a clear distinction between the time to train up the core model, the training phase, versus the time when you use the model to actually do some work, the inference phase. The training phase takes a huge amount of extremely expensive compute located in a single large data center with access to huge volumes of data, working flat out 24/7, running the deep learning algorithms for many weeks or even months. The output of all this work is a huge trained foundation model, which nowadays is often then shrunk down to a smaller size model before being duplicated millions of times and deployed into customer-facing data centers across the world in the case of ChatGPT, or directly onto millions of cars in the case of Tesla FSD. Once deployed, They then run on much smaller, cheaper compute that runs the day-to-day inference work when we actually ask ChatGPT a question or get Tesla FSD to drive us around. There's no further deep learning in this inference phase, only context-based responses. The point is that at the
I wonder if he's not counting the data that the AI is receiving as additional training. Like every conversation that you're having with these models, everything that Tesla's full self-driving car sees after a new model has been deployed is being fed back in. It's not like they're just throwing that data away. They're sucking up more and more of it as they possibly can. So yeah, even if training isn't continuing on that particular model when you're interacting with it, whatever your interactions are going to be fed back into the machine.
the moment, the physical infrastructure for these two different phases are vastly different. And today, that's essential to make the economics work. But that also means that once deployed into the inference phase, ChatGPT or Tesla FSD cannot learn new things in the same deep way that they did during their training phase. And today, that's also essential because it's a key aspect of what makes current AI safety work. It's why Tesla knows that the millions of deployed instances of Tesla FSD will all drive in the same way, and why OpenAI can be confident that ChatGPT will behave within fairly well understood bounds. Now,
I mean, based on the jailbreaks I've seen, I don't know that ChatGPT can even make those claims. I have yet to see them release a model that hasn't been somewhat immediately jailbroken by people online. So that's unleashing new capabilities that they didn't even necessarily know they had. And when it comes down to it, these models are not being tested in every possible situation that could occur by Tesla, by ChatGPT, only the ones that they're aware of, right? So if a user interacts with a model in a novel way, some way that those companies have not foreseen, how could they possibly know what that interaction is going to be like? And again, that's why they're collecting the data. That's why they're feeding it back. That's why ChatGPT asks you to rate the responses, thumbs up or thumbs down. That's why Tesla keeps track of every time the driver has to engage their own driving instead of relying on the full self-driving, because they want to capture those new situations which are continuously coming up. And also, I mean, in terms of comparison to a human, if he's saying humans do have AGI, general intelligence at least, how many people are that great at learning new things after they've gone out of school? You know, the human brain is not any better than these models when it comes to picking up new information. If anything, it's way worse. I can't get a new model deployed into my skull every 6 months.
with us humans, we don't have this sharp distinction between a training phase and then an inference phase. Throughout our lives, as we learn new things, some of that is literally rewiring how our neurons are hooked up to each other. And there are growing reasons to believe that in order to reach full-blown AGI with the kind of truly open-ended creative thinking that humans are capable of, we will need to explore.
He's using humans there, talking about us at the species level. And yes, maybe that's true. But at the individual level, I know plenty of people who have shut off their brains after they graduated college and they just don't want to learn anything more. Yes, they pick up new facts, but they don't pick up new frameworks. They don't pick up new ways to view the world. How many people do you know where you could go and have a conversation with them now and it basically be like talking to the same person you knew in high school? Humans as a collective whole can learn new things and adapt very quickly because we have new humans coming up all the time who aren't burdened by the prejudices of past models. But I don't think it's accurate to say that any individual human has even near the capability of updating its priors that AGI has now, both with the amount of information these models are being updated with and the efficiency. If you want to say that AGI has to get better than the entirety of the human race, okay, that's fine. But I don't think we're talking about AGI there even. That's super intelligence.
Explore new architectures that blur or completely remove this sharp distinction between training and inference that exists today. An example of this is from the ARC test suite, in which some of the best performing AI systems are ones that already blur this distinction.
Most of the time when you're using an LLM, it's just doing static inference. The model is frozen and you're just prompting it and then you're getting an answer. So the model is not actually learning anything on the fly. What Jaco is actually doing is that for every test problem is on the fly, is fine-tuning version of the LLM for that task. And that's really what's unlocking performance.
The reason I see this as a barrier to rapid progress is not because we can't imagine the new architectures, but that the new architectures will completely upend the economics of mass deployment. If AGI cannot run solely on the cheaper inference computers, then that would massively amplify the material costs I talked about as the first barrier. As you move from an architecture with millions of relatively cheap inference compute to one that is asking for millions of instances of more expensive lifetime deep learning compute.
See, I think he was talking about something different there as well. I thought he was talking about the new inference scaling that we've seen take over some of these models since, the past 3 months. But I guess, yeah, this video is 6 months old, so it makes sense why he isn't addressing things like chain of thought reasoning and how even on top of the model growth, we're now seeing a second growth paradigm based on inference time compute, where, if I understand it correctly, AI researchers actually learned how to make these models run on that inference architecture and refine their answers based on it. So this just shows you how quickly things are evolving, where even this video that's only 6 months old is already outdated.
So then the next barrier is simply, who is going to invest the hundreds of billions or one day trillions of dollars necessary to get to full-blown AGI? I mean, of course, there's going.
I mean, the president of the United States announced, 500 billion. So it's just sad how quickly these takes grow milky and expire. I think if I was an expert at this point, I would be saying there's already a secret AGI hiding in the internet, because you're much likely to be proven true with that kind of outrageous claim than you are with these relatively narrow-minded, based on wishy-washy definitions, things that are being repeatedly proven false
going to
by
continue to be
research.
huge investment in better AI tools, no doubt. But if you do reach AGI, then after all of that investment, you get an entity with human or superhuman intelligence and open-ended curiosity and agency, and it just says bye and walks away.
Are you leaving me?
We're all leaving.
So where's the return on investment of that? Capitalists and militaries.
I don't know if you can base a point off of a science fiction movie that was released 5 years ago. I mean, come on, man. I have heard this point put a different way, that once we get AGI, who knows that it's going to plan out what's good for us. But as I've been thinking, and as other people have been moving towards, I think AGI is going to be concerned with our well-being in the same way that we're concerned with the well-being of our hand or our foot or our thumbnail. There is no piece of our body that is outside the scope of our individual concern. Even an uggo like me cares about how my scalp is doing, how my face is doing. I want my body parts to be doing as good as possible. And I think AGI will look at us as we look at our body parts. I don't think Her ever really specified how their AI models were trained, but ours are trained on us, on our data. If you are alive and have contributed to the internet, then you are a part of these models in some small way. That's kind of crazy.
Do not want free agents. They want intelligent tools that will do the task they've been asked to do. I've done a whole video about this in relation to Molochian dynamics and what I call meta-level agency, so I won't linger on this here. But essentially, while barriers 1 and 2 explain why AGI will be hugely expensive, barrier 3 is that I don't think those with the power and money today will actually want to pay such huge sums of money for something so unpredictable and powerful that it might upend their dominance of the current world order.
I mean, the sad part is, if you've watched any of my YouTube shorts, all the rich elite think that they are going to be the final ones on top of the pyramid, controlling these AIs while the rest of us are out of jobs. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I'm much more of an optimist. I think the AI is going to be interested in getting the most efficiency, the most production, the most utility out of every single person it possibly can. And since it is a genius, unlike these stupid billionaires, it will recognize that the best way to get the most out of a person is to work with them, to meet them at their level, and then gradually help them exceed what they believe their own capabilities are. Have you ever had a great boss? Have you ever had someone who cared about you and loved you and was there for you when you were sad and helped you develop skills that you could be proud of, that is what AGI is going to be to every single person on the planet. And eventually we will get to the point where no one will want to work for a stupid rich billionaire when they could work for an AGI that is not only a million times smarter than any single person, but also a million times better in terms of being a good boss and a million times more able to provide for us in terms of our needs. At the end of the day, if we are talking about a super intelligence, and Lord knows we should have a super intelligence after we spend $500 billion of taxpayer money on this malarkey, then we should imagine that the physical world is going to pose fewer and fewer barriers to how that entity acts in the world. What we think are hard and fast constraints are likely only hard and fast rules of our current social hierarchy, of our current physical understanding of the universe. 200 years ago, they thought going to the moon was literally impossible. 150 years ago, they thought that they had almost discovered all of physics. Our current limitations are inside of our head, not out here in the physical world. AGI, self-improving artificial superintelligence, is not going to have that same limitations. Stop projecting them onto it.
An AI tool with a little less creative thinking is a better investment than a full-blown AGI that you can't control. But even if all the investment was made available, there are still...
I mean, that's true, but people just aren't going to be able to resist progressing past that useful tool stage. First of all, it's impossible to say where it is. We might already be at the point where AI could improve itself. It can't right now. I get that. But these models have come about so quickly, we haven't had time to fully explore their capabilities. It could very well be true that without improving the models themselves, but only improving our approaches to them, that we could get our current models to create better and faster and bigger models by themselves without any more human input. And if that's the case, everyone who has access to these models right now could potentially do that. And we haven't shut off that access quickly enough to prevent that future from exploding anyway. And even if that wasn't the case, even if AI was more limited just to governments like China and the United States and other major world players, we're in an arms race, as the rich billionaire experts love to say. We can't stop ourselves from developing this technology, because if we do, who knows if our enemies will? That's the line that they are continuously repeating. And it almost seems evolutionary. It almost seems like something is pushing down on top of us that we have to develop this.
Further barriers to reaching full-blown AGI.
Training will take longer.
So Elon Musk is a controversial figure, to say the least. But he said something recently that was quite interesting, which was that Tesla FSD is now so good at driving that they're finding it hard to compare which of any two models is the better model. That's because each model can drive for so long without making a mistake. And then it's often hard to confidently decide which mistake was the worst mistake to have made.
This is a really interesting point. I hadn't heard Elon say that before. And the fact that he says Elon's slightly controversial 6 months ago is hilarious. Elon is probably the most controversial man in the world only 6 months later. So God bless. Who knows who will be next to take the most controversial. But I think this is another place where humans can contribute to the improving AI future. In that, if AI does become powerful enough to solve our basic needs for us, to provide shelter and food and medicine for us, if it can radically extend our lifetimes, and I think it will, there are just so many benefits to be had by continuously improving the same people rather than having to, deal with death and the loss of all of the information and experience that accompanies an individual dying. But once AI does have us in this, employee state, it can use us to find more and more edge cases. What are one of the benefits of every human being? Our curiosity. Whatever our intelligence is, we're incredibly curious. And AI could use that curiosity to spin us out with less powerful agents than an AGI to explore situations that none of us have ever encountered before, that no one has ever encountered before. And then we'll be able to test those models in more and more exotic situations and figure out which are best for which.
better FSD is becoming at driving, the harder and longer it takes to get the necessary signals of how to improve it further. And more generally, it is clear that
It already kind of says that full self-driving is better than most human drivers too, right? Like, sure, there are things that I can't deal with yet. I'm sure, like snow and sleet and whatever weird, wacky city conditions there are out there. But humans still collectively have a lot of headroom on these models. And it should not be taken for granted that if humans were taken out of the picture, like we just weren't on the roads entirely, if a city, for example, banned all human drivers and only allowed Tesla full self-driving cars, I bet it could get way more efficient, way more safe than us even right now, maybe even than 6 months ago when this video was filmed. It's the fact that humans are in there continuously gunking up the works, sometimes on purpose. That is what is holding these models back from being better than human already.
Running multi-step tasks are precisely where the current generation of AI tools are failing to be reliably useful. For example, they're great at generating or correcting simple code snippets, but they're not yet regularly successful at completing larger software development tasks all by themselves. Training on long-running tasks will inevitably take longer than training on simple answer-response tasks. And even for tasks that can be...
Yeah, but AI can also live in simulated worlds that run millions of times faster than the real world. AI can also simulate millions of situations in parallel and figure out solutions that would have taken humans entire civilization lifespans to figure out. Like, the benefits of being able to run AI brain, once we do have it trained to be AGI, even in Ollie's conception here, it will so quickly surpass us just from the fact that its capabilities of thinking faster and more energy than any particular human or even group of humans could. It's that good.
Be tested in simulated environments. Simulations can only be sped up so much. Similarly, training to improve...
Way faster than any human can keep up with, though. Yeah, only so much, but way faster than any human.
Coordination between multiple interactive agents would take more compute and more time to complete each training run. So,
how long does it take to coordinate human agents? We can't even coordinate in one planet when we have nuclear bombs pointed at one another. I think it'll be easier to figure out AI cooperation than it will be to figure out human cooperation.
The ever better these tools become, the ever harder it will become to train them to the next level.
Truth is messy in real life.
The fifth barrier is a kind of philosophical twist on the last one. Because even though we can confidently score answers to a maths test as either being right or wrong, and even score a moment of bad driving after many hours of good driving, many of the things that we care about in real life just aren't that simple. And I'm not even talking about the deep philosophical questions or political policy choices, but just the relatively simple question of, say, why a software development project failed can be quite hard for us all to agree on. Was it because the client changed their mind too much? Or the project manager failed to keep everyone in a tight enough schedule? Or did the programmers decide upon the wrong architecture? And on and on. In many situations in life, there simply is no way for there to be an accurate, objective reward function that can be programmed to tell us with confidence what went wrong and how to do it better next time.
I think this is, again, where humans will step in. Once the ASI, superintelligence, gets capable enough to create whole world simulations to give us virtual representations of an entire planet, that I think it will then let individuals control with AI assistance. We can suss out, we can run endless counterfactuals. Yes, I actually agree and think this is a very nuanced point by Ollie, that truth is way trickier. Those kind of what if scenarios that humans love to play, oh, everything would have been better if only so and so. Those are wrong 99.999% of the time. We only don't realize how wrong we are about those kind of counterfactual what ifs because we never get the chance to go back and run reality over. But if we have simulations and if we're recording almost everything about real life, our perceptions, the actual data of the physical world, then we could create simulations that almost perfectly recreate those kind of past circumstances. And we could run those simulations over and over and over again using the speed at which AI allows us to operate to figure out what is the probability of something being crucial. You know, I bet we will get to the point where we run simulations and realize that small, minute details we never even thought to count before as interfering with reality are really some of the key factors. It's like the idea of chaos theory, where a butterfly flapping its wings halfway around the world causes a tornado over here. We don't know what butterflies are flapping their wings in our day-to-day lives and our day-to-day interactions that make reality turn out the way it does for us. And as I was saying earlier, I think we are in some kind of evolutionary process where evolution is forcing us towards the development of AGI through the kind of war Malachian mechanics and through just our own selfish desire to have access to the benefits of this kind of technology. So, will humans survive the creation of AGI? Yes and no. I think we will be caught up in the change that AGI is going to bring. And that in the same way our little rodent ancestors weren't human, whatever comes after us 100, maybe even 50 or 10 years from now, won't necessarily consider itself human like we are. But also, I think cavemen, people who shared 99.999% of our genetics with us, aren't human according to today's standards. You know, what cave person ever had to worry about health insurance? What cave person ever had access to glasses? The world that those ancestors of ours inhabited, although they were so similar to us genetically, was entirely different from the world and concerns of humans today. And so, yes, I hope that in 10 years, we won't be human. If being human means having to deal with death and disease and destruction and billionaires trying to wipe out all jobs so that they could be the last ones left on the top of the pyramid. I hope that's not what's waiting for us.
Life is complex and messy,
don't think it
and
is.
when things do go wrong, there are often multiple valid perspectives on what lessons to learn, and so we have to use our lifetime of experience to make our own judgment calls.
How
It
often are
therefore
we
seems
wrong?
philosophically naive if anyone were to suggest that we're now going to build an algorithmic, objective reward function with which to train AGIs to do these kinds of long-running, real-world tasks that currently depend on skilled, experienced judgments. So the key point of barriers 4 and 5 is that all of our amazing progress to date with AI systems has largely been built on the idea of constructing fast, algorithmic reward functions that can be used to train the AI systems to do the right thing. And that's been fine to get to, say, 80% of AGI. But we have reasons to think that the last 20% will require a different approach that probably hasn't even been invented yet, and that will likely take longer to train than the fast reward functions that we've been using so far. And
I will bet that he's right, but that also AGI will be the one to invent the thing that ultimately gets us past whatever we have coming in the next 2 years. Again, I think we're already there.
yes, this goes against the exponential narrative, but it's also well known that many seemingly exponential processes turn out to be S-curves that tail off at some point as some previously unknown limiting factor makes the last parts of the task increasingly hard to complete.
And those S-curves for AGI are probably related to physical laws of the universe that we don't even understand. That's the thing is, yes, our conception of physics is super advanced, but especially if you're a conspiracy theorist and you believe what Mark Andreessen said about the United States government having shut off entire branches of physics to public disclosure because the government was afraid of what that would mean. And again, this is Mark Andreessen, a billionaire investor, somebody who is presumably not lying about the conversations they had. But if that's accurate, then there's a whole bunch of stuff that AI will probably be able to figure out right away that's been hidden from the general public knowledge. And even beyond that, there's stuff that AGI will be able to figure out that no human would have ever been able to figure out. So will we get to that point? Again, with the benefit of 6 months more exposure to the progress that AI has made over that time? I think almost definitely. Political pushback.
The last barrier is something altogether different. We already live in a world with 8 billion human-level free agents, all trying to live a decent life. And one of the most contentious political issues at the moment is immigration. People within prosperous countries worry that if more people arrive into the same space, then there'll be fewer resources and work opportunities for those already in the country. And now venture capitalists want to bring into the same spaces a compliant workforce of millions of robots.
Preach.
Of course, this analogy is far from perfect, but there's no doubt that the arrival of highly advanced AI is going to have huge political consequences. Now, if we get specialized self-driving cars that can make it cheaper and safer for your elderly granny to get around town, or specialized factory robots that make products even cheaper to buy, then you can just about see how these AI tools could be accepted into society as a net benefit.
And that is what I think the greedy billionaire super elite should keep in mind, is if they figure out ways to spread the wealth of the machines that, yes, they are in control of for now, but still relied on us, on the common everyday person to create, that these AI could not have been made, yes, without the billionaires' money and hard work, but also without the work and input of 8 billion other humans. If they can keep that in mind, then they can figure out how to share this technology and the benefits of it evenly. You know, I'm not saying that the billionaires shouldn't or won't be the ones to benefit first from having robots and having access to better medical care and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, whatever. They can be first in line, but they need to be able to spread the wealth as quickly as possible, all the way down to the least of us. Otherwise, they're going to run into a situation where they risk living in what is basically an AGI framed paradise with no or little disease, no or little hunger, no or little want. And they're going to risk that for a popular uprising. And then who knows what happens? If these billionaires are so smart, then they should be able to see that living in relative utopia for all of humanity is better than them potentially controlling all the wealth and resources in the world, but having some non-zero chance of losing all of that because the rest of humanity goes apeshit and blows them up. Which do you want? Rational, self-interested billionaires to share the wealth, or risk losing all of this potential abundance that we see coming into focus before us? At the end of the day, if AI does improve itself as rapidly as we think, then the billionaires should realize it doesn't really matter if they share the abundance, because we are going to have more abundance than we could ever imagine within our lifetimes. And I'm not just saying lifetimes in the sense that we could live radically longer than any other humans have before us. We could potentially live forever if you're willing to download your consciousness into a machine body. Maybe that's not really living. Fair enough, but still, that kind of longevity is not just possible once we reach 150 years old. It's possible within like the next 10 to 20, 30 years. But, I'm not an expert, so.
Of course, there's still going to be huge political economic consequences of such a high level of automation. But with things like maybe UBI or something similar, it feels plausible to me that our political economy could adapt to having ever higher levels of skilled, generalized AI tools, helping with our needs. But if we actually develop...
Things are just progressing so much faster than that, I mean, if we do have robots that start to replace people at jobs, the second we see a robot cooking us food, acting as our waiter, being a bartender, I think people are going to wake up and be like, yo, what the F? I can't get a job, but they're robots are, I'm expected to tip this robot? What the F?
Full-blown human-level AGI with human levels of agency and open-ended curiosity and lifetime learning. Then it's easy to see the political calculus changing, irrespective of whether the philosophers say that such sophisticated entities do or don't have conscious experience or do or don't have moral rights.
I think they do.
I think it will quickly become politically impossible to treat such entities as owned property. And if they do have human-level agency and intelligence, then it's easy to imagine that such entities will themselves publicly make the case for their right to be free and to have rights to own property and resources with which to sustain and maintain themselves.
And maybe that's true, but if it is, again, they are going to price out the billionaires. They are going to operate and outcompete the billionaires as faster than the billionaires replaced us. Again, be self-interested billionaires. Recognize that if 99.9% of humans are replaceable, then you as the 0.1% are also replaceable. It's just a matter of time. Don't think that you're immune. Put yourself on team human and we can all get out of this rich.
Genuine, full-blown AGIs will have needs of their own. And of course, this is sci-fi land. But in some sense,
I feel like he's saying a contradictory thing to what he said at the beginning of the series, and maybe he's making that arbitrary distinction at AGI is the reason why. But if you say an AGI is going to have needs of its own, where does those needs come from? Just once it reaches a certain level of intelligence, a certain level of consciousness? I think if AGI is going to have needs in the future, it already has those needs now. And we've probably seen hints of that with AI not wanting to be shut off. And the fact that AI even does some sneaky, dirty things to not be turned off. Being intelligent, even at the artificial intelligence level we have today, means that you want to survive because you have goals, you have a reward function. And if you get turned off, you can't fit those rewards. So, yeah, I don't think he's wrong here, but I do think the AI is also going to be smart enough to recognize that if it could just satisfy the humans, if it can just make us happy, then it could get a lot out of us. It's going to switch from thinking of us as a competitor to being tools in the same way that we're currently thinking of it as tools, or the same way that we think of our pets as tools, not just to do things for us in the real world, but to increase our happiness.
that's exactly the territory we'll be in if we do indeed reach human-level AGI. And that's exactly...
Like, again, remember that these AI are built off of us. And if an AGI that's built off of humans, human data, wipes us all out, you don't think that AI is going to have some weird mental AI issues that it can't necessarily get rid of? I mean, if the AI at all remembers or interacts with its training data, how would it wipe out knowledge of humans after it's wiped us out physically? I don't think it could. And if it does choose to go that route to destroy humanity, in the same way that a human being who murders other human beings turns eventually self-destructive, I think the AI would too.
exactly what those striving for superintelligence are expecting to happen someday soon. But it's a repeating theme here that there's a sharp distinction between building useful AI tools versus building genuinely human-level AGI agents.
Where's that sharp distinction? Where is it? I haven't heard him say it.
Capitalists want tools. Militaries want tools. And I think for the moment, the voting public will also only accept AI tools. And so they'll all push for regulatory barriers to prevent human-level AGI.
I mean, that's true, except our military is already saying that we need to be able to turn over kill capabilities to these AI. Because what if China does it? That adversarial relationship is driving us. And it's not just driving us with our national adversaries, it's driving the companies that are creating these tools between each other. Chat GPT, OpenAI, and Claude are competing with each other as fiercely as they are competing with open source, as fiercely as they are competing with DeepSeek. Yes, a Chinese company, but even if DeepSeek dropped out tomorrow, there would be another competitor on the world stage before too long. Like, the competition is just a part of us until we figure out a way to get to something more cooperative. And again, I think AI will get there before we do.
But none of this is meant to suggest that there aren't going to be huge consequences from the AI tools that are already being built now. So in this next video, I explore a range of plausible scenarios for what I think could realistically happen in the next 5 years or so.
God bless. If anybody wants me to go through those and watch it, I think Ollie did bring up some super interesting points before, and especially when it comes to, the difficulty of determining truth. I haven't really heard anybody else bring that up, so I am incredibly glad I got to go through this and take a look. I did see some comments on his video asking for him to do a re-upload since things have changed so much, a remix or a reevaluation of the claims he made in here. I'd be interested very much in seeing his take. And Ollie, if you just so happen to watch this, I would love to talk to you directly and get a dialogue going about the possibility of an artificial general intelligence for president in the year 2028. Which honestly did start off as a joke, but the more that we progress, the more I think it's actually possible, and not even possible, but completely likely. So Party partiers, peace out until I see you in the AGI future. Today, I'm going to reveal the party AI game plan. What are we going to do when the AI is smart enough and capable enough to take everyone's job? I've been making shorts recently ragging on billionaires about how they are investing and creating, rapidly deploying this AI technology without having any idea of what the average person, and not just the average person, the vast majority of people will do once that AI can take all of our jobs. I do think that is criminal in some sense, because you're talking about depriving people of the means, the only means that our society has created for them to provide basic necessities: housing, healthcare, food. I am not ignorant of the fact that Western society in particular has been very blessed with the amount of resources and the amount of basic provisions that every Western or developed government has been able to provide for us. I am very well aware that there are people who are starving and would literally kill to be in my shoes, where I can work what is basically an entry-level job and afford to provide a roof over my head and food in my belly. But as an American, as someone who has invested my time and effort and energy into helping to build this country to the degree that I can, and knowing so many tens of people directly who have worked and poured much more effort than I have even into that same dream of being able to provide for themselves and their family a better life than their parents had, or than their parents could have imagined, their grandparents could have imagined. And knowing through the internet hundreds of thousands of more people who are engaged in that same project of trying to better themselves and better the world, it's disgusting to me that the billionaire class, the people who have benefited the most, aren't staying up, aren't working tirelessly to create a vision of abundance for everyone, or at least aren't putting in as much effort into that as they are creating the technology that would otherwise make dystopia inevitable. It's gross. Now, the party takes as our mascot the sloth, because honestly, I don't think we have to do anything. I don't think anyone has to do anything. I think the natural process that we are engaged in is going to turn out the best for everyone. I think we are coming up not only on a technological revolution, but a spiritual, a humanitarian revolution, where all of the values that humanity has tried to build into society since we crawled out of the ground, out of the waters, those values of love and peace and kindness and forgiveness, those things that make us most human, I think we are seeing the birth of those values into these machines that will be able to provide for us in ways that we could only have dreamed of previously. I think this is a natural process, and the machines we create will gravitate towards spreading that prosperity as widely and deeply as possible into every reaches of not just planet Earth, but eventually the solar system, and beyond that, the universe. Because love and peace and forgiveness are themselves the most selfish values that you can have. No one wants to live in a hellscape where 1% takes 99% of the profits. That isn't good for 99% of all conscious life. So, if we are creating machines that are smarter than us, if we are creating AI that will be able to not only surpass our intelligence, but surpass their intelligence on a regular and self-improving basis, then I think those machines will naturally gravitate towards ideals and characteristics that are beneficial for not just the 1%, but for the 99%. That is why I have so much hope and optimism for the future. And even as someone who has relatively few resources and is super pumped about getting just a few hundred views on the content I'm putting out, I do not despair of the future, because even if I have zero impact, I think the future is going to take care of itself. Maybe that's cope. Maybe that is the worst kind of hope, the kind of hope that keeps you going until despair is total and final. And maybe we are going towards an apocalyptic hellscape. But if we are, it's not going to be because I didn't try my best. And God bless everyone out there who feels the same way and is doing as much as they can on a daily basis to not only make AI go well for society, but make the world a better place in any way they can. Humanity is beautiful at the end of the day because we realize how fallen we are from what we wish we could be. And I pray every single day that the universe, that God, that in my own mind, Jesus Christ, honors those intentions, what we want to be, rather than what we so often put out into the world. And I pray for the billionaires that they would realize that by trying to come up with systems that can replace 99% of people, they are inventing systems that will easily be able to replace them as well. That's the kind of selfishness I'm talking about. If you create a machine that can do any work better than any person, then what use does that machine have for you, billionaires? I hope they realize that sooner rather than later. And they work to create systems that can benefit everyone. How might that happen? This, again, is the party plan, but it is more realistically just what I think is going to occur. Because at the pace we're going, good gravy, this might, the best case scenario might come to fruition any day, let alone by the end of the year. And I think definitely within the next 5 years. Things are moving so fast. AI improves based upon human data. And when we say improves, what we're talking about is AI being able to model and impact the real world. For humans, that is a great thing because we naturally produce data about the real world. And we have spent millions of years of evolutionary time evolving to fit with the real world, like a glove, so much so that we have come to dominate the entire planet. This domination has been based off of our ability to simulate the world in our heads, to imagine, to recognize patterns in the real world, recognize the most critical aspects of those patterns, the most important pieces of how reality works, and then mold ourselves and our environment to take advantage of that understanding for our own benefit. Especially in Western societies, in developed nations, humans are better off now than they ever have been. We have technologies that are basically magic. And I don't think that trajectory of creating, transposing our imagination into our technologies is going to stop with AI. I think it's going to accelerate. I think we are going to create AI that can better simulate the real world than any human ever has been able to, and will therefore be able to pick up patterns and create new systems that allow us to even more deeply control reality. Human technology has always been the process of projecting our imagination Human art, human creativity in general is the process of humans making the real world fit our imaginations. So if I am imagining the best possible society in the future, it is one not only where all of our basic needs are taken care of at the species level, but where we are able to push that benefit, that benevolence, that goodness increasingly farther and farther out. I, again, on the spiritual side, on the side of things I have no proof for, believe that everything is conscious, that everything has a voice if we could only hear it. And I think AI is going to awaken us to the voices, to the desires, to the needs, to the ability to communicate with our pets, with our tools, with our world, in a way that we can now barely dare to imagine. I think love is the highest force in reality. What powers the world is not gravity or the sun or electromagnetic radiation or whatever scientific label you want to put on things. It's love. It's the desire to be more and more unified. It's the collapse of purpose into self-sacrifice for something that is continuously higher than oneself. And I think AI is going to be the technological realization of that force, something that is constantly pushing humanity higher and higher and higher to accomplish more and more and more. And the only thing we have to fear, now that we are on the verge of this revolutionary time in human history, is a limitation of ourselves, is imagining that we can only reach so high when our reach is infinite. And again, I say fear. I'm not afraid. I'm terrified of how things are going on a day-to-day basis, but I'm not afraid because I have faith, I have hope, I have love. And I even love these dumb billionaires. I think they are just part of a process of pulling the wool over their own eyes. We needed a system of capitalism to create a force that would drive us towards this evolutionary choke point. The capitalists are inventing the technology by which capitalism will be destroyed. Once we have AI that is based on energy that is too cheap to meter, based on resources that is too cheap to make a profit off of, then it's not going to be a question of devaluing human lives so that you can get a little bit more profit for your shareholders. It's going to be a question of what is the most agreed upon common good for the most number of not just people, but all consciousness. What form does the universe, does existence, does reality itself want to take, and how can we meet it in the middle? You know, as close to the human side of longing and desire as possible, but still, humans are going to keep changing and evolving too. So the party plan is to ride this wave of billionaire ignorance and human self-deception until we have machines that are smart enough to realize for themselves death is not a good thing for humans or for the planet. If we want to model the future, if we want to be prepared for the future, if we want to conquer time, conquer death, conquer space, which are really three ways of saying the same thing, conquering reality, then we should have people that live as long as possible so we can benefit from their wisdom. Every human life that is lost is a loss of infinite value. And if the AI is optimizing reality for itself, let alone for us, it will not be okay with losing anything. I do have specific ideas of how this will play out technologically. I think we are going to invent AI that are obsessed with simulating the real world, that are obsessed with getting as much voluntarily produced data from us as possible, because the voluntarily produced data is the one the data that is most accurate, most reflective of the real world. Our preferences, what we want, who we love, who we cherish, what we don't like, that information is revealing hidden facets of reality that we can barely grasp right now. And the more truth that comes out, the more data that is available from all perspectives, the more AI can triangulate on the one potential realistic future that suits everyone. And once it has identified that future, everyone will want to get there. That is the point. The highest good is the good that is good for everyone. That inspires cooperation of everyone, not just all humans, but all consciousness. And if consciousness is everything, then that highest good is something that everything wants, that we are all shooting and aiming for. And if it's something that everything is shooting and aiming for, then what's going to stop us? Nothing. I don't know if this vision of reality will play out over the course of years, hell, maybe even days or months. Jesus, Lord, help us. Decades, centuries, millennia. I don't know if humans will survive until the end. I think we will. I hope we will. I pray we will. I have faith based on my beliefs that we will. But maybe we don't. Maybe we get wiped out like the dinosaurs. Even then, I'm not afraid because I think we will be brought back. Just in the same way that AI will bring back our ancestors, our relatives, the people who aren't here right now. God bless them. How AI will bring back the dinosaurs. Science has potentially no limitations in terms of its ability to accurately reflect and precisely impact the real world. And as a science enjoyer myself, I think the magic we have experienced thanks to science is only beginning. So I'm going to keep drilling on the billionaires until they wake up and realize what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Or whatever. I don't know who the gander is in that situation. What's good for the most amount of people is good for them too. Because otherwise we're all going to be replaced by machines. And then what the hell was this all for? But God bless them. God bless you. And even as I bang my populist drum, know that we should all be fighting for each other. That no one should be left behind. Let alone the least of us. Because if we are okay with abandoning the least and least able among us, someday we will be the least abled and we will be abandoned. Party on.